The USS Enterprise crew observes Starfleet Remembrance Day. Hemmer wanted to be a botanist because he loves flora. And Lieutenant Kyle finally gets to do something outside of the transporter room. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and I am Team Lieutenant Kyle. Today, we're doing a review of Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 4, Memento Mori, written by Davey Perez and Bo DeMaio, directed by Dan Liu. This episode, by the way, is brought to you by special thanks to Galenda Bruton. We see her in the live chat all the time. Thank you so much, Galenda. We love you.
We love you.
Yeah, throw a little spice in there. She wants to hear something different. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's funny you mentioned the cadet, the transporter. What's his name?
Yeah,
Transporter
Lieutenant Kyle.
Kyle. Yeah, he did. He just made it to the hallway though. He didn't really get too far.
I know, but like when I saw him at first, he was fixing something in the hallway. I was like, "Yay! Finally, Kyle gets to do something out of the transporter room." But then he ended up having an actual like storyline, an actual thing going on in that hallway. So good for him.
Yeah. And they set him up, with the transporters being down. So it was good.
That's true. He had to do something.
Yeah. He had to do something. I mean, who's working the transporters, damn it? You said it was shut down.
Otherwise, he's just playing words with friends in the transporter room.
Yeah.
Playing Wordle.
Yeah, exactly. Kyle's on TikTok. No, you mentioned the director, and I guess I'm going to start there. I felt like there were moments where I was observing the directing and the cuts and the editing that they were doing in this episode. I thought it was well done. Some of the choices that they made, a couple of overhead shots on the main bridge when Pike's sitting in the chair. I like those swirling overhead shots that kind of come down into a face shot. There were some other moments there that I thought were really good. So shout out to Dan Liu.
Yeah. I mean, it might be pronounced Dan Liu. I don't know. We'll have to find out, but It's spelled Liu. I noticed a lot of cool directing choices as well. One was especially effective for me was when Lieutenant Laan figures out that it's the Gorn, and we see the ship come out at the first time and just come swirling at you, and shooting and swirling, and she's looking out the window, and it's just like, it was a very tense action movie kind of scene, like oh nuts, the Gorn shit is about to hit the fan. And I thought that was a really effective shot. We've seen that kind of delivery before, but it's very kind of like heart pounding. It really grabs you when you see that. It comes out of the nebula or out of the gas giant. It's just swirling and coming at you while she's looking and breathing and frozen with fear. I thought it was great. Really loved it.
Yeah, and speaking of swirling out of the nebula, and a lot of the exterior special effects shots that were in this episode,
beautiful.
I thought they were very well done. The whole black hole effect, we've seen the concept of slingshotting around planets or slingshotting around black holes and using gravitational pulls and whatnot. This is something that Star Trek's talked about many times and have used the concept. So that's not an original thing, but what I thought was unusual and original about this particular delivery of that concept was the visual effects that were accompanied with this idea. I thought the visual effects of them using boomeranging off of this black hole was pretty well done. I enjoyed the exterior shots of the ship kind of being chased by the Gorn ship. I liked the exterior shots of the planets or they called it the brown dwarf that they were in.
Dwarf star, yeah.
So I liked those things. So visual effects are another thing that I thought was done very well done in this episode as well.
Yeah, good marriage of live action and special effects there, to where you couldn't really see where one ended and the other one started. I was noticing even just all of the visuals on the bridge, and that looks like it's all real. I don't know how much of that is CGI or if it's all just practical effects, but just looking at the bridge, it's just so intricate. It's gorgeous. It's spacious. It's so detailed. The color schematics are great. And every little detail on, the consoles and on the walls and the lights and all that. And every once in a while we get these shots, these wide shots of the bridge, maybe when Pike is talking to an alien or doing something, and every once in a while, an officer is pushing buttons. And whew, man, those people are talented, the ones that are doing this.
Yes, and it kind of reminded me of how we were having a conversation. I forgot who it was with, but one of the guests we had on was talking about the functionality of the panels in the background and whether I think he works on,
maybe it was Doug Drexler.
I think doesn't he work on the Orville as well,
yes.
Doug?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was Doug. So Doug was telling us about the functionality of panels and, what the displays would read and if they were actually interacting. And I was paying attention to that particular aspect watching this episode. So when they did show shots of the screens, I think we had, for example, Uhura was working on the panels with Hammer, right? She was, typing in codes and trying. I was just looking at how the interface was responding to her hand movements and whatnot. There was also
nice.
stuff on the bridge, where I was paying attention to the display as they were touching the paneling. And
there was one that really stood out. There was like a circular one, right?
Yeah,
I noticed that one too. When you did this, I was like, he's talking about the one I'm thinking of too. Like,
you saw that too.
Yeah, every once in a while you're like, oh, that's interesting. And you can't help but try to like figure out, oh, what does that correspond to? And it's good that all of the functions and all the the sections of the ship, they have different types of buttons, and it's also great from a movie making or filmmaking perspective, because like the truth is, you got to be able, you don't want the audience to know exactly what this stuff does, because then what if the actor pushes the wrong button at the wrong time and people are going to catch and pause it and be like, wait, she's actually releasing shields here.
He just fired the photons. That has nothing to do with the shields.
Yeah. So we got to so they want it to look interesting and for us to kind of get an idea of what's going on there without it being so specific that the actors have to be focusing on doing that perfectly rather than doing a great performance, just keep it kind of vague, but really interesting.
Yeah, but I just noticed those things, the same thing that you noticed, the icon of that circular, really intricate display. I said, whoa, that's something I hadn't seen before. And my eye just kind of stuck on it for a second. And I was impressed by it because I just said, well, this is the kind of detail it's meaningless ultimately because, we don't know the function of what it is. But the fact that it was so intricate and detailed and the way it was corresponding with the hand movement, I thought was great. So they're paying attention to a lot of the details when they make these episodes. And that's just the visual part. The storyline, which is a whole nother separate aspect, what are they writing about? This show feels really like you sit down for an adventure, and the venture is a one episode adventure. So I don't feel like I have the weight of a overarching season arc on me right now. And I kind of like not having that at this point. I like the kind of up in the air fluidity that this show has, because I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what the adventure is going to be next week. I don't see, they may be setting up the Gorn for later on. They may be setting up other things, but the fact that it's ambiguous, I'm kind of liking to some degree.
Yeah, so far we're only 4 episodes in, but I'm very happy with this series. It's very, digestible. It's very easy and fun to watch. The characters all have their own voice. And I've been saying that since episode 1. It's very clear who's what and what's who and who's who and all those kind of different iterations of the same thing. And so far, I like every character, and sometimes, Star Trek series and any series, you have some characters that are more fleshed out and others that you're like, I really don't know much about this character yet. And some of these characters, like say Ortegas, they haven't had a real focus on them yet, but we still have an idea of her character. We'll get a much better idea once they flesh her out a little bit more in a further episode. But we already know she already has her own particular voice as an actor and the way the character is written. She's kind of smarmy. She's kind of jokey. She gives like sarcastic remarks, and we're going to get, that's what we're seeing on the bridge. At some point, there's going to be an episode where we're going to get more depth about what she's like, say, off the bridge, or what her story is, or what her aspirations are, something like that. And, I'm looking forward to it. This episode in particular, we got the Gorn without actually getting the Gorn. And that's always been kind of a horror or thriller movie secret, which is the monsters you don't see are scarier than the monsters you do see. And so we kept waiting to see the Gorn, and we never actually saw them. But we know what they look like anyway. They're lizard guys.
Yeah. I was kind of expecting to see a Gorn.
Me too.
I wanted to see what the makeup was going to look like and how they were going to approach that. The last time we saw a Gorn, it looked like Barney. So it was a little Barney looking. So if we can,
I wanted lower decks.
Yeah, I want to see what the new Gorn makeup job is going to look like. I wanted to see if it was going to be even more like a Velociraptor dinosaur, Jurassic Park looking.
That's what they looked like in Enterprise. They had them for like one episode in Enterprise, and they made them look very dinosaur-ish. Very much like a Velociraptor, if I remember correctly.
Right. But what we did get was we got the storyline of the Gorn was able to relive the trauma that La'an has had in her past. So they're kind of digging down in that rabbit hole of her backstory. She became the forefront leader of this episode because she had more knowledge than anyone else in dealing with the Gorn, and there was very little in their database to kind of give them what to expect. So she was the lead in that situation. I thought was very believable. And I have to say, I don't have to say it, but I want to say that I enjoy.
Say it.
Yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm not saying it to offend anybody, but it's just my own personal observation.
Don't say it.
I like La'an as the number one on this show.
Oh, interesting.
I like her as the number one. I think she has what it takes, the kind of fortitude, the kind of toughness. She doesn't really waver too much. She's a really strong woman, and I like her persona. And I think that if I had to pick one to be the number one, she would be the person I would choose as my number one on this show.
Interesting. Because, when the writers and producers created this show, they were already forced with air quotes, to have, Pike as the captain, Una as the number one, and Spock as the science officer. That's kind of like that. Those are basically the only rules they had to follow. So maybe they inadvertently created a character that would be a great first officer because they did. Yeah, I agree. She'd be a great first officer. I think the only thing that's stopping her from being the first officer is that she's on her way up. So, she's on her way to becoming a first officer. She's not there yet, but it seems like she's got that trajectory where, everybody knows it. It's kind of like in sports. You know when a guy's going to become a superstar, even if he's not there just yet. But we're like, okay, this guy's he's going to be there soon. Soon, I should say. So yeah,
And
I
that's what I
agree.
feel
She's great.
about Pike's character. I think she's a great actress. I think that
Hmm.
the strength behind her performance is just unwavering. She matches Pike's energy very well because he's a very kind of egotistic, self-centered person, and to have somebody who um, contradicts that or combats that or conflicts with that, somebody like a Spock character who's always like challenging him, or another La'an character who's also challenging him, I think that makes the show better. And I also think that it allows Pike's character to have something to bounce off of too. He always has these kinds of things that he can bounce off. He can bounce off Spock, he can bounce off
Right.
La'an, and gauge where he wants to be at or where he's at.
Another thing is that Una seems to be the only of the female characters that does not have a super strong personality. She's a little bit more tempered, whereas obviously, La'an is very, headstrong and gung ho and tough. Then you have even Uhura, who we never really knew her to have kind of this strong personality. They're giving her a lot more to really bite through, and she kept doing like weird sports references. I was like, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm gonna let that go. But then they did it again. I was like, all right, you guys.
Touchdown!
I know.
What?
I was like, this is weird. That was a little weird. But then you also have Ortegas too, who's, she's always quippy, she's always snarky. She's doing her thing. Same thing with Nurse Chapel, right? So maybe, number one's prime role is to just kind of be a little bit more tempered. I mean, look at who are the more tempered characters? You have Pike, Spock, number one, and M'Benga. Those are basically the ones, because Hemmer's also one of those, big personality types, rough around the edges.
Pike doesn't seem that tempered to me.
Really?
Yeah. I see him. Yeah, there's a little level of it, but I see him more playful, and I really see him kind of very similar to the way Shatner played Kirk. There's something there in the ethos that reminds me of the portrayal that Shatner. There's a lightheartedness, there's a little jokiness, there's a little throwing it away. And then there's also like the "I'm the boss" moment, what that I thought William Shatner's portrayal of Kirk, sometimes he would flex the power, like, I'm the one who gets to make the decisions, I'm the boss, I'm the captain type of flexing, and I see that from Pike as well. And there was a moment in this episode that I really liked. There was Ortega's telling Pike, hey, we're really close to these, we're really close, Captain. And he's like, just keep it steady, keep it steady. And Ortega again says, hey, Captain, what the hell is, and he looks over at La'an, his number one at this time, because she's acting number one in this episode. He looks over at her and says, he gives her a look. There's no words. He gives La'an a look like, tell her to shut the hell up.
Yes. Yeah, that was great. I remember that.
Do you remember that look?
Yes.
And
he gave her a look like, hey, you are the acting first officer, so do my dirty work, you know what to do. And she's like, oh, shut up, or whatever she said.
Yes. And I love that moment. It was great. It was just a great little moment. And that's another thing they do well on the show is they don't make everybody so like everything's so nice and get along and, let's have a conversation about how wonderful everything is. There's a lot more conflict. There's a lot more headbutting on this show. Everybody's got a, they have a line that they're not willing to cross. They're not going to be too open and friendly. There's kind of a discovery. Like, we don't know much about Hemmer. He's still kind of, waiting to give you something. He's still a little bit like Odo in the fact that he's like, I'm grumpy and I'm going to be grumpy, and you're not going to find out until I decide that I'm ready to open up. A little bit of that. And to your point earlier about the kind of even keel that Una's character is To me, she's more like of a Dax. When I see Rebecca Romaine playing this character, I see the way Terry played Dax. I think you're muted right now, Ryan. But
Sorry, yeah, no, totally agree with you. Yeah,
yeah, so and that's why I don't think she's the number one, because Dax to me was like more not enough to overcome a personality like Kira, who was a badass, who knew how everything runs. And to me, that's the dynamic that I'm seeing on this show. I'm seeing La'an more like the Kira character, and Una like Dax. So
it'd be nice if they made it kind of like the triumvirate of Pike and Una and La'an. How before there was like Kirk and Spock and Bones. It'd be cool if those were the three, because Pike and Spock and Una might not carry enough inherent conflict, but La'an brings that inherent conflict with her, with her strong nature and her strong will. And I think it would be really cool, because that would, I think, pull out some of Una's stronger characteristics, because she would, like you're saying, she would have to kind of not be lost in that scene, or not be lost in, if this were real in that situation, she might get steamrolled. But I think she's going to have a lot of strength to her. But you're right. She doesn't have, they haven't given us a ton of, this strong personality or these over the top, reactions or quirkiness or anything like that. Right now, she just seems like a very even keeled, seasoned veteran, steady first officer. And, I'm hoping and I'm assuming that they're going to give us more depth with her character. I mean, we got a little bit of it in episode 2 or 3. I don't remember which one it was, but we want to see, we don't mind seeing a little bit more conflict. And what the great thing is about the conflict is they all remain professional within that conflict. So far, nobody's crossed the line. They've never taken it too far. There's conflict, but they stay professional with it.
Yeah. And look, we're going to see, the next episode is called Hammer Time. So we're going to see a whole different thing.
I wish. Man, I wish.
No, but the Vulcan mind meld and that whole getting inside of her mind, I kind of enjoyed that moment, and I also enjoyed Spock saying, "Get out of my mind," right?
Right.
He's like, "I'm cool with going in your mind, but get the hell out of mine."
Yeah. Yeah, nobody said we were going to be prancing around in my mind. We're sticking to you right now.
Yeah, don't ask me about my sister. This is about your sibling.
Which, by the way, was a NAM for Michael Burnham, a non-appearance mention for Michael Burnham. Yes, he didn't actually say the name, but he did say my sister, or maybe she said your sister, which is good enough for us. And we did hear Michael's disembodied voice saying a line as well. So, non-appearance mention for Michael Burnham. That was the only one I heard in this episode, the only non-appearance mention.
Yeah. There's another, Ortega gave a line in this episode that I enjoyed too. It was a very small thing, but Spock goes through and he says, "Yes, we did all the calculations and this and that." And then Ortega they cut to Ortega and she's like, "Well, I did most of the work." I love the way she delivered that line. It was a one sentence, but it speaks to the kind of personality that I believe they're building for her. It's like, she has this confidence. She has, she's outspoken. And I just like that moment of her coming in and say, "Hey, wait a minute. Don't put it all on the computer."
Yeah. That kid's got grit.
Yes.
Or when she, because she definitely oversteps. For example, when she says, "If this works, this will officially be called the Pike maneuver." It's not her call to make, but of course, it's lighthearted, it's fun, Pike definitely seems like the kind of captain that allows for a little leeway, allows people to be themselves,
Right.
because that's when you can usually get the best out of people. So we're going to get a lot of that from her, where she's just like, yeah, I'm overstepping a little bit, but he's cool with it. He gets me, whatever. There was
Yeah.
one line, probably my favorite line in the episode. It was given to La'an, and she says, have you ever seen eyes that are both dead and hungry at the same time? And what's great about that line is I could completely picture it. Eyes that are dead and hungry at the same time. And I feel like anybody that really listened to that line could picture it too. And I want to give kudos to whoever came up with that description, because that worked for me. It definitely gave me an impression. It gave me something.
I thought Gul Dukat did the whole series with eyes that are dead and hungry.
Nice.
So yeah, he's mastered that.
I was thinking like zombies, like zombies where they're just like, they got these dead eyes, but hey, anytime you say Dukat, I'm going to agree with you. So.
And speaking of Dukat, did you ever notice that they were talking about dropping torpedoes and brown dwarfs? I was thinking to myself, what's this episode really about?
Dropping torpedoes.
You're dropping torpedoes. You had a brown dwarf. What other reference? We used to call them drop the kids off at the pool.
That's right. That's what I thought you were. There's an upper decker.
What were they really thinking about when they wrote this episode?
I did notice that every time they said brown dwarf, they never said brown dwarf star. Like they said it like 3 times. And I'm like, they're just assuming that we know. Like, luckily, I know, when they said brown dwarf, I just assumed that they meant dwarf star. But like, they're definitely assuming that their audience is knowledgeable, and that's what's cool about Star Trek is they're like, oh, they'll get it. They know. No, but then what if we don't? What if we're like, the brown dwarf? What do we?
No, there were moments where I thought the science was good and was legit. Going back to what you're saying about, just speaking to the audience and having the faith that they're capable to not only understand the concepts, but probably really understand the concepts and explain them back to people. But one of the things that I thought was great was the whole, remember when Pike said, what does a chicken, a squirrel, and, an
opossum, they all play dead.
A snake.
Yes.
Snake. Right. So I like that, the basically the language to describe the science. So that language is used to describe the science of what somebody would perceive an object going into a black hole. It would seem to them from the outside that it was stationary, that this particular thing was stationary if it was being sucked into the black hole, whereas it would be moving. So that's a scientific, that's an actual scientific truth. They use that knowledge, that science about perspective and looking at something entering into a black hole and what it would look like, and explained it, I thought, very well. So I actually wrote down the science was pretty good to me, and I liked the whole slingshot idea and all of that. I thought the science was legit behind it.
And like when they said that there was the brown dwarf coming out of the black hole.
That's what I'm saying. What were they thinking about when they wrote this episode? What was it called again? What's the title of this episode?
Oh, it's called Memento Mori.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it was. Memento.
Yeah. Nothing. Mori. We can't do anything with that one.
They can't do anything with
connection
that.
There.
The graphic of the ship crushing under the atmospheric pressure. Love that scene. I love the whole crushing up of it. I thought that was cool. And I do have a little nitpick.
Ooh, get him.
It's a small one, but
get him, Soldier Boy.
My nitpick is the ending comms between two people. It seems to me a little played out to say Sisko out, Hemmer out, Mbenga out, Ryan out, Cirroc out. it would seem that people would eventually develop their own tagline or
Interesting.
none at all when they leave a conversation. It just seems that too many people are using Mbenga outs, hammer out.
Well, it's probably just protocol. But how
is
cool
it
would
though?
it? I would assume, but I get
Yeah.
what you're saying. I think it would be really cool if, like, each captain has their own engage or hit it or let's fly. How cool would it be if they're like, Mamba out, and then somebody else, their thing is like,
Pike gone.
yeah. Yeah, Una, moving on, like whatever they want to do, that'd be fun. That would be fun, but it would get confusing for them. They feel like, wait,
after a while,
which one's who's this? It's Uhura.
Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? Or are you talking to somebody else?
Uhura says Uhura dropping bombs. That means she's done. Come on, get with it.
But yeah, no, it jumped out at me, and I was like, "Does everybody say that? Nobody says anything else." They did. It seems like they're listening to us about the personal logs and the captain logs, because we did get a personal log at the end of this. We got a captain's log in the beginning.
They are listening to. Actually, I got verification 3 days ago that they're listening to us. Then they went back in time, rewrote a little bit of it, with their time crystals, fixed it. I mean, they're pretty good. They're pretty quick about it.
They're pretty good. Yeah. So
shout out to Paramount Plus. The great job, everybody at Paramount and CBS.
Good job.
You guys are amazing.
We'll help you out best we can.
Yeah.
What else is there? Starfleet Remembrance Day. Is that something new, or is that something that's been around? It is
something new, I think. And I'm very happy with it. I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm glad you brought it up. Basically, they're saying, that when you have a fallen comrade, you've got a different badge to wear the ship that you served with that person on. And it's a great idea. It's a beautiful concept. I wonder if it's done in other forms of the military. But they actually came out and released a bunch of those badges for the different ships. And there's the Shenzhou there, which was the original Discovery ship. There's also the Discovery, because as far as they know, it's gone forever. There were others. There was La'an's ship. I forgot what it was. Well,
this episode was the Puget Sound.
Puget Sound, that's the one, right?
Right. Yeah. So no, it's like a call to the Veterans Day or Memorial Day, which we're about to have Memorial Day weekend. It's kind of a remnants of that. Like Veterans Day, Memorial Day. It's piggybacking off of that idea, and I think that's it's an interesting concept. I'm glad they introduced it, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm looking for real quick those badges, but I don't see them. I saw them online a little bit ago, but yeah, really good idea. And then just for that day, they're wearing the badge of that ship. Yeah, I don't see it, sadly. Anyway, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a great idea, and it's also good for the story. It's good just to add more Star Trek lore. Let us know in the comments, guys, if this is the first time. I believe it is, but if I'm wrong, let us know. And yeah, each one of those things, they're just like little circular things with the ship name, and a cool little design. I think that was great. Another thing I thought was great, and I kind of hit on it at the beginning, was I am quickly becoming the president of the Lieutenant Kyle fan club. That dude has the cutest smile. He's like, when he's smiling, he's like, hey, and I'm like, oh, what a little stinker. Get you little Lieutenant Kyle. I like this guy. He seems so nice. And he never messes up in the transporter room. Boy, everybody should have a Lieutenant Kyle on their ship. And it is a character that we knew from back in the day. He was in the original series and in the animated series. I believe it was just another of the million characters voiced by James Doohan in the animated series, but there was actually an actor for it, an original actor for it in the original series. And he looks a little younger. than his original series counterpart. But I think I'm very happy that they have that role, that they've reprised that character. Actually, he should be younger than in the original series. It's like 8 or 9 years before, so that's perfect. But I'm very happy that they've got this character and that they're going to flesh him out a little bit more, bit by bit. And I also think that I want to give a shout out to the actor that's portraying him, because I think he's great. I think he just chews up the scenery, and he's very charismatic. I'm very happy with Lieutenant Kyle so far.
Yeah. Well, I hope they do flesh out these torpedoes and brown dwarfs.
Hey, zip, zing, we did it, everybody.
Yes. But no, it's funny because they did make a reference in this episode to the lower decks. And I thought that was a kind of a troll on Star Trek trolling itself. Yeah. They said, yeah, we have to get rid of the lower decks. He's like, all right, we'll seal the lower decks. Basically, they're going to have to die. And I'm like, wow, that's a cold-blooded move.
Cold-blooded, man.
That's cold-blooded.
Real quick, this is Lieutenant Kyle from the original series, so maybe he's not that much older, but yeah, it's about the right age range because the original series is supposed to be older. And this was him in the animated series, looking a little different with the awesome mustache. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is young Kyle. Mm-hmm. And he kind of reminds me of Boimler. So it's funny that he's
interesting.
There's something about if they have a live action lower decks, he could be cast as Boimler for some reason. I get that. But he did get a little runaway scene. He got couldn't save the other guy.
He got more than I expected. Remember I was saying, I don't remember if it was last week or when, but I was saying I'll bet you bit by bit we're gonna get an episode or two where we get more depth into Kyle. He's gonna get something. They're gonna give him something. I didn't realize it was gonna be right here and now, episode 4, but I think that's great. They're gonna give everybody a couple little nuggets. Like there was Zuniga, right? He was on the bridge. And remind me, I used to have a friend whose last name was Zuniga. So I was like, it's nice to see another one up in space. And he got a couple lines. And I hope what Next Generation would do sometimes is they would hire this actor, and Deep Space Nine did it too. They would hire an actor that was like, would get a few lines in that. What are we giggling about? That they would hire. What?
No, I got a scene in mind. I'll tell you after you finish.
Okay, yeah. We would get like an actor that was hired for that episode. And that character would actually get a few lines and a little bit of depth to it, to that character, but then they'd never be back ever again.
Right.
Like they were just hired for that episode and then we never saw them again. But what newer Star Trek is doing is doing a better job, at least something I prefer, which is having them come back, and so I hope Zuniga is going to come back and give us more.
You don't see that much of red shirt killing anymore. Where it'd be 4 guys go to the planet and you knew 3 of them. You don't see that as much. But
we're expecting it, right?
Right. It's got to come at some point. We got to see it because that's another part of the lure. Yeah. I was laughing because I kept thinking about this scene with Hemmer and Uhura. And there was a moment in which they were strapped up in these suits and they had to tether themselves because they were going to open the air hatch or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was laughing because I really wanted to see what that looked like while they were boomeranging across this thing.
Yes.
I wanted to see them like tethering and dangling out in the middle of space. They didn't show that enough for me, like what they were going through and experiencing.
I was expecting that we would see that too, but they're like, you guys fill in the blank. They were flying around and floating around and whatever. Moving on. We're focusing on the story, guys. We're like, but we want to see people flailing and diving and saving each other. And they're like using a wrench to just whatever.
Yeah. Or like, they're in outer space and they're just in space flying around like somebody.
Yeah, dangling. Yeah.
They didn't give us that. They didn't give it to us.
Here are those badges, by the way. I found it on trekcore.com. So here's the USS Gallant, USS Discovery, the Shenzhou, the Congo, and so on. And there's the SS Puget Sound.
Angelo.
Yep, Angelo. Nice. That's a good one.
My Angelo.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely what it is. Yeah. Farragut, Excalibur, Cuyahoga, and Yangtze. So those were really cool. I was happy to see that. They all have the same design, but with just their name added to it in a different color. So I was pretty pleased with that.
Yeah.
We're just about out of time here, everybody. But did I mention I was happy with Lieutenant Kyle? And the theme, by the way, the theme song just keeps getting better and better. I love it. I do like that they give us a last time on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, because we don't need it. We don't need it because it's not a continuation. But we like it. We enjoy it. It's helpful because it reminds us it's all character development. They don't need to tell us anything about what happened in the previous episodes plot-wise, because the storylines are not connected. But they want to remind us what's going on with each individual character's character arc. And so I love it. At first I was like, wait a minute, why are we getting a last time? But then I'm like, oh, this is really cool. It's just giving us more about the characters. And that's what we watch Star Trek for.
Yeah. And I felt like when I was watching that opening trailer of what happened last time, that it didn't just have what happened in the episode before. It actually had several episodes leading up to it. Like these are the highlights of the last 3 episodes, essentially. So it wasn't just like the last episode that you missed, this is what happened. It was basically filling you up like these are the main character development plots that we've worked on up until this point. So I thought it was good too. It was a nice little refresher, just getting in. And it wasn't overly long. Sometimes this is what happened last time episodes are like, it's just as long as the episode itself. And you're like, dude, I get it. I don't need to rewatch it. Just refresh my memory a little, you know?
Also, this was the first Star Trek episode that had a character named Fig in it. Fig. So I just wanted to point that out. First Fig ever in Star Trek.
That's a fig friggin' deal.
You almost had it. You were right there.
Sorry, I tried. Self-sealing temple.
There we go. Yes, and Fig did remind us that Fig says the monsters took Daddy. That was Fig's big line. Anyway, so we do want to give a very special thanks to a few people, and they are named Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon, Carmen, a.k.a. Skillet, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Tim Baum, a.k.a. Grandpa One, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Rex A. Wood, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Erica Strom, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DeQ, Neil Akasaka, and of course, the insect champion of the world, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, etymologist. Etymologist is like the study of the origins of words. I don't know if she's into that.
Oh, yeah. No.
She's into insects. Anyway.
Insects.
All right. Well, this has been great. Really looking forward to episode 5. Man, this is fun. This is fun.
Yeah, this show's been good and very entertaining thus far. So I hope they keep it up.
I think they will. I don't know. When you said that, I just got happy. I'm like, yeah. I hope they keep it up forever. Let's do 15 seasons. Let's do it. I love it. All right. Thank you all for joining us. And until next week, always remember the 7th rule.